if I were to tell you in one sentence, the basic difference is profit motive. In civil, the networks are run to make money. It's commercial network.
Right.
In Army, we have no such compunctions. We run it for efficiency, for the efficiency of the Army and to give communications where they are required. Willy-nilly, we get sucked in because the technology that is available in the market has come from the commercial field. Earlier days, it used to be that the military used to bring in technology and the civilians used to adapt it.
Right.
No longer. Now the technology cycle has become so short that the Army cannot afford, the defense forces cannot afford to wait for long R&D and then induct technology and then the civilians will embrace it. No. So R&D is happening on both sides.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Teal Time. My name is Apalak. Teal Time gives me an opportunity to talk to luminaries of the industries. Today I have one of them. I have the privilege to host none other than General SP Kochhar, who is the Director General of COAI, which is the Cellular Operator Association of India. It's an absolute honor to host him. Kochhar, a very warm welcome to a new episode of Teal Time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure is all ours. We've tracked your journey. You're a veteran in more ways than one. And we covered that. But with all our listeners, many of them who are young entrepreneurs, people who are studying right now, trying to understand what they make out of their careers. Would love to understand a little bit about you as a person, as an individual. And it's no better way to go right at the beginning. Probably if you could spend the first couple of minutes telling a little bit about yourself. Where did your life begin with? What were your likes, dislikes, your school, college, so on and so forth?
Thank you so much. I was born at Amritsar.
Okay.
But because my father was posted in Missouri at that time in South India.
Okay.
So we shifted there right after I was born.
Okay.
And thereafter, I studied in Missouri and then in Dehradun.
Okay.
Missouri, I was in Hampton Court. And in Dehradun, I was in St. Joe's School. And from there, then I moved briefly to Delhi along with my father when he got posted to Delhi.
Okay.
But I didn't spend too much time in Delhi, less than a year. I went back into the army. And back to Dehradun.
Right.
So that was my academic journey because that time the entry level was 12th pass for the army.
Right.
And I completed my 12th from Dehradun. Didn't have an opportunity to complete my graduation before joining army. All my studies thereafter I did in army. So I did my BTech, I did my MTech, and then later after time when I finished my PhD. So that has been my journey. And those days there were not many opportunities, especially in a small town like Dehradun.
Right.
And we were all thinking of engineering college and medical college, and because the army academy was there, so some of us ventured into that. So those sort of things, but at least in school we used to play. We used to have athletics, we used to have co-curricular activities, which these days, I'm afraid, has vanished.
Right.
So that was...
Towards physical education and other...
I used to take part in races and to some extent in debates, nothing more than that.
Honest. But tell me something, sir. I mean, because a lot of our young listeners would love to know because, I think when we say the common citizen, right, there's a lot of reverence in our eyes for the army, for the defense forces, right? Yet it is, as we know, it's not an easy path to follow and not an easy path to crack, right? And what we've seen in many cases is people from the army defense background, their children end up going to the defense. Or there is some inspiring story which led them to join the army. What has been your story?
Well, there has not been much of a story, except that we, as youngsters, all of us were inspired by the well-dressed cadets who used to come out from IMA.
Such a
And
right,
I joined NCC,
right.
and that to a naval wing NCC because the uniform was very attractive. And then it was peer pressure. Everybody was appearing for the academy. I also appeared and got through. So that was the way I joined. I don't come from an army family. My father was a civilian,
Wonderful.
and we didn't have any relatives in the army. I was the first one to have joined.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sir, if I take the story forward, I mean, like I said, you have a checkered career in the army, and now in your incumbent position, you are the Director General of COAI, which is a very, very important role. Given your experience of the defense forces, and we understand the criticality of communication, right? And whatever, as a civilian, I would know. What are some of the best practices do you feel, our telecom sector can embark upon, given your experience in the defense? Or maybe as with your stint at COA, you have espoused upon that the sector can probably have this as part of your best practices or experiences in the Indian Army?
You see, for understanding the experiences and the best practices, you must understand that what is different of the communication system in Army and Civil.
Right. Okay.
And if I were to tell you in one sentence, the basic difference is profit motive. In civil, the networks are run to make money. It's commercial network.
Right.
In Army, we have no such compunctions. We run it for efficiency, for the efficiency of the Army and to give communications where they are required. Willy-nilly, we get sucked in because the technology that is available in the market has come from the commercial field. Right. Earlier days, it used to be that the military used to bring in technology and the civilians used to adapt it.
Right.
No longer. Now the technology cycle has become so short that the Army cannot afford, the defense forces cannot afford to wait for long R&D and then induct technology and then the civilians will embrace it. No. So R&D is happening on both sides. And since we have to buy from the same market, we end up buying equipment which is commercially viable or has just been introduced. Now, there's a difference between the two. If an equipment has just been introduced, it has been introduced on technical parameters, not on financial parameters. That will come later. Whereas if the Army is not abreast of technology, they will miss out some very good equipment which has come in, but may not find testing in the commercial field.
Right.
I'll give you one example. I was posted in War College, and that time Cisco introduced an equipment called long-range Ethernet. I found a lot of promise in that, and it was my task to make the campus automated.
Right.
So I homed on to that equipment, and we used that equipment extensively, and we rolled out the first converged network in the Army. So IT and telecom going on the same network. Now that was a big success, and it became a case study. Even now you can see it in the Cisco portal that it was the most networked college of the world.
Wow.
Unfortunately, that technology was technically very sound. Commercially, it didn't prove out to be very sound, and therefore it died out. So that is something we caught right in the beginning.
It was cost prohibitive.
It is not cost prohibitive, but it did not meet the requirements which were there in civil, right? Much like whenever a technology gets introduced, there are technical reasons for it to succeed, there are commercial reasons for it to succeed, but most importantly, that should be business reasons for it to succeed.
Right.
Like good technologies like Tetra have gone by the wayside because it did not make business sense to the people who were promoting or their competitors.
Right.
So that way, we in Army, we had to keep our eyes and ears open. Right. We had to learn from our counterparts in the civil, and they had to learn from us. But the major thing that we learned in the Army, and which I practiced, was what does the user want, right? And what are the operational imperatives that the Indian Army wants as a whole.
Needed.
So with that in mind, then we went around looking for solutions. And those solutions then we implemented. So we not only went to the drawing board to make the solutions, we also implemented them and we then operationalized them. So it was an end-to-end thing that we did, which does not happen in civil. In civil, it are the service providers, it are the network providers, and then there are the OEMs. There are too many.
Here they've confined to a few.
Yes.
But I'll just go back to one of the statements that you made. Very interesting. You said, like you said, in the past couple of years, we've seen the best of technology actually emerging or originating from the defense forces and being used in the consumer's space or in the civilian space. You say that has changed.
In the last decade, it has certainly changed.
Okay.
Earlier,
Reason for that?
because the life cycles of technology and the utilization of technology which comes after a huge amount of investment is not worth the while.
Right.
When internet protocol came, it took decades for it to mature in the defense labs. But look at the way it flourished after it was released in the civil. Right, I was doing my MTech that time in IIT Delhi when this was released. And nobody could ever imagine that this will take off the way it has.
Right.
So now everything is packetized. Right. So that is where people started realizing that R&D is essential for civil also. And defense then becomes a small part who consumes this technology.
But I see there's a definite shift in how things happen. Like in the last decade or so, have been fairly disruptive in terms of how we operate.
Yes.
And one area that, again, very interesting that you spoke about, you said when we talk about civil setups, organization, the basic difference is organizations look for profit, whereas in defense,
Efficiency.
But having said so, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, sir. While we deal with nodes of efficiency, there must be a cap on how much one can invest. And is there a part to this, or the only thing that would matter in a defense setup is efficiency? Money and the other aspects are not into.
Certainly not. Money is important. Budgets are important.
Right.
But that is where innovation also comes in. That is where sound knowledge comes in, experience comes in.
Right.
And you see, in Army, I learned one thing, that you have to have inventory of equipment, and include network as equipment,
Right.
Of three parts. One is which is getting into obsolescence. It's not obsolete, it is getting into obsolescence.
Yes.
That constitutes about 30% of our inventory.
Right.
And about the current equipment should be about 40 to 50%. And the balance is the new technology which is coming in. Now, in a huge army like ours, we cannot say that we will have only current equipment and we will discard the previous equipment. We can't do that. You can't do that, right? So we do not have systems like in civil where you have at lease and you have try lease where you can get equipment, send it back. We don't have that. We have to own that equipment. Right. And in certain cases, we do, of course, hire services from trusted partners. But that is not our major way of providing networks. Right. Our requirement of communication network is actually in wartime.
Right.
And therefore, we cannot depend on only civil networks. Here we can, in peacetime we can, but we can't do that in war. So therefore, for field purposes, we have to have our own networks. And that is where ingenuity comes in. Right? And that is where we have to roll out networks, not only by spending or splurging money, but by utilizing existing equipment, integrating it with incoming equipment, and giving what the user desires. Right? Give an example.
Please.
We had an old network which was called the Plan R, which used to work on old technology. Used to give 12 channels, 24 channels, 36 channels. It was adapted delta modulation. So that was the network which we were having. It is still there, but it's obsolete. That time it was obsolescence. It had gone into obsolescence. So the radios which were being used there had been upgraded from time to time. but the switching equipment remained the same. So when I got posted to the deserts from the mountains, my first question was that this radio equipment gives you 2 MB stream. You are using only 512 to give 24 channels. Where is the rest of things? Nobody had an answer. And we looked at very serious way of solutions that via NATO signaling, this thing, that thing. Anyway, but finally we homed down to a very simple thing: split the bandwidth, give only 512, see whether it works or not.
You match it, basically.
So it worked. So we had spare bandwidth with us. So what did we do? We engineered IP networks on that. So obsolescent network running along with the current networks on the same radio network.
Oh.
So this is innovation. If we had to do that with new equipment, it would have cost us a bomb. We couldn't have afforded that.
We see defense always in the cusp of innovation, and which is what we've seen over the years. And that's why I was curious to know how that shift of power has happened. Like you said, it's purely because the investments required and the time being so long. Tell me, sir, with this background, now, your current position, you represent industry, right? A group of organizations, we have private organizations, right? How do you, get your prior experience where you have to take care of your associate party members' interests, right? Because telecom sector, as we all know, is a very regulated sector also. There are certain governance issues, regulatory issues, so on and so forth. Yet, you need to promote the interests of all the stakeholders. How do you balance this? But there is a delicate balance, as I can see, given your experience and given your current position.
The very fact that I've been here for 4 years means I'm balancing it. Okay, I'll tell you. What I learned in the Army was how to use technology optimally. Right, including innovations, without caring a damn about what profits I get. My profits were efficiency.
Right.
Can I keep my networks 99.9% up? If that happens,
Time is more
that is most important, right?
Right.
Here, it is not my job to see whether networks are up or not up. Okay, from the Army, when I came into the civil world, it's not that I came straight into the COAI. I spent 6.5 years in what is called Telecom Sector Skill Council, where we were skilling people.
Right.
That is where I got a grounding how to mix and match Army and civil world. From the Army, I came with a background of how to train people, how to utilize the human capital.
Right.
Okay. In the Army, not only was I the signal officer in chief, but before that, I was also heading the HR department. So I had that mix of both, which I utilized in framing up the policy. I was the founding CEO of TSSC. Right, so we framed up good policies for training people. And what I learned there was how does the industry consume these people. So while learning about how does the industry consume the trainees which we are churning out, I also learned the working of the industry. And because the government was having an oversight, I learned the working of the civil government ministries, other than defense ministry. So there's a lot of difference between the way defense ministry works and the way other ministries work. So that is what I learned in those 6.5 years.
Okay.
So when I stepped into COAI, I had that as a background.
Good.
Maybe if I had come straight from the Army,
that
would have become difficult.
Yes, which is why I asked this question.
Yeah.
Tell me one thing. Now, again, a question which I'm sure you'll have an interesting take on this. And as a consumer, right, nowadays we hear a lot being spoken, said about data privacy and security, right? Unfortunately, and I'm sorry if it offends anyone here, globally, I think data privacy and security is seen much more strictly and seen with much more seriousness, probably than what is expected from a country like ours, right? What is your take on this, sir? Because, but as a industry association, while yes, probably one of the key charters is to promote the sector and look at its profitability, but somewhere do you see this also being an important ambit?
Let me correct you on this. My industry members
Okay.
recognize the fact that the national security comes first and foremost.
Okay.
Profits follow.
Right.
They are not of the opinion that profits versus anything else. No. National security is first.
Right.
And to that extent, they recognized the initiative that the government is taking towards data privacy and security. Having said that, there are costs involved,
Right.
right? Both in terms of technical costs as well as in terms of operational cost. And that is where the dialogue happens. It does not happen that do we require this or we don't require this. That is given.
Right.
But where we get into dialogue is how much period of time are you giving us to implement this, right? And how much are you subsidizing? Because if you keep increasing the burden on us,
Right.
so that is where finances come in. In Army, we didn't have that burden. Here, we have limited money. We are an Indian association of Indian companies. So if we have to churn out more than what we earn, we will shut down. So that comes into play.
While you absolutely rightly said, sir, so let me rephrase. For instance, while I completely understand, that national security comes first, and that's why, data privacy laws in place, data sovereignty being spoken about. I'm talking about the general consumer. So for instance, we know for a fact that my data is probably sold to a gazillion people whom I get calls from, regardless of how. So what are some steps being taken on that front, if I may?
Yeah. Now, if you deep dive on what you just said, it's a very important point, and it's one of the points that consumes a lot of my time.
Right.
We are only carriers of data, telecom networks.
Right.
We don't own the data. Okay. That is one. Second thing is, by law, we are not permitted to exploit that data.
Right.
Okay. So although we have trillions of bytes of data lying with us, we can't monetize that. But now you look at the other part, the MNCs, without naming anyone. They use data, they not only store data, they use data with impunity.
Right.
And there are no laws on them. The regulations which apply on a telco does not apply on the LTG. The rules which apply on a telco or the security framework under which telco operates does not apply on OTTs or LTGs.
So it's not a level.
It is not a level. For the same service, there are two sets of rules. So this is something we have been in discussion with the government. Vociferously, we are saying same service, same rule.
Right.
That is one. Second, we are saying that we are an Indian company. Our three operators are Indian, all three of them.
Right.
Why are they being disadvantaged when it comes to MNCs who are using the same Indian data? They should contribute.
Also in this.
Yeah, because we say who builds the networks? Who builds the telcos? So now we build the networks to a quality that is required by the LTGs, by the larger OTT players.
So you provide the platform, they make
Without paying anything.
bring it.
To create the infrastructure, they pay zilch.
Right.
But they earn huge amount of profit because the subscribers who are riding on that.
Right.
So that is something which needs to be corrected. And then not only in India, it's happening the world over because we are in the middle of a change. And the only country who has constructively reached a solution is South Korea. Yeah, there the LTGs have to pay the telco to use their networks. Right. So they pay to create the infrastructure, partly pay to create the infrastructure.
Right. So, you spoke about change. The sector also going through maybe your phase of complete disruption. Why I say this is because maybe 15, 20 years back when I saw telecom sector, it was earlier landlines, right, which is fixed line connectivity, data, which is your enterprise connectivity, and mobile. But we see more and more, you just spoke about three of your members, they themselves, venturing into many new areas. I mean, just because you spoke about global MNCs, you need to be competitive. So, in spite of the traditional services like mobility and so on and so forth, therefore into unified communication, therefore in cloud computing, data center services, co-location services. So given the fact that all these are new ventures, how do you see the telecom sector shape up? Because like I said, when you probably took it up, it was in a very different sphere of business. Now it's completely
It is different. It'll continue to change and evolve, right?
okay.
Now, my personal take on this is, and this has nothing to do with my association. This is a personal take. I think I have been saying on various platforms that there is nothing known as telecom anymore.
Right.
It is IC tech,
Right.
information communication technology, electronics, and cyber,
Right.
all put together. You take any equipment which you call telecom or IT, you'll find mix of all these.
Right.
And it's not a mixture; it's a compound. You can't separate it.
Right.
Okay. This is one. As far as the equipment is concerned. Okay. Now, how is the sector evolving?
Mm.
You yourself will agree with me, and this is world over, not only in India, that networks are not taken for granted, much like water and electricity. There will be disruptions sometimes, but networks are taken for granted, and when it is not there, then you feel the absence of networks, right? And actually, COVID made telecom run the country.
Right.
Right now, with networks having been taken for granted, they cannot be a money-making business alone. So if any company thinks they can run only network and make money, they can't. Right? So what is emerging now is, now I go to the OSI layer. I'll become a little technical.
Please.
There are 7 layers. So network is at 3.
Yeah.
We are working up to layer 3 with the network companies, right? Whom now presently we call as TSPs.
Yes.
What happens to platform 4? The level 4. Level 4 is the application layer. That is where the user interfaces with the networks.
Right.
Currently, the user is interfacing directly with the networks,
Right.
isn't it? You whatever service the TSP is giving, you and I as a subscriber we consume directly.
Right.
Now with these new things coming in, a new kid of the block is emerging, and that is a platform. Now that will be an interface between networks and the user.
Okay.
And that is a new business area, because that is what will aggregate all the offerings that anybody can make to the user, but which requires the background of a network. And what is it which does not require the background of a network? The foundation has to be a network.
Yes.
Has to be a network. So multiple type of platforms will come up, which will be aggregating platforms, and people will bring their services onto these platforms, including the telcos, and redistribute it from there.
I think you hit it on the park, sir, because like I said, it's a very platform. So if you look at many success stories in the world of e-commerce, it's again the platform.
Yes. Amazon.
They were all aggregators.
So this is also going to be an aggregator.
Right.
In a different format. It will have APIs.
Right.
It does not bother what you and I are bringing to the platform. That is your problem. You are best at doing that. But it will distribute it to the users, carry it over the networks. So this is what is going to emerge. And if this emerges, now where do you place the platform? Depends on what technology you're using. If you're using 5G, platform will be at the edge, nearest to the user.
Yes.
If you're using 4G, it will be at the core.
Right.
Right. So it will be old wine in a new bottle, but this is the way it will work. The basics are these only.
Right. Right. So you spoke about 5G, and again, with my limited understanding, let me frame my question. Historically, when we look at any telecom service provider's revenue, right? I may be a little off, but probably not too off. A large chunk of it comes from consumer business, right? I'm assuming anyone upward of 80% is coming from
At this point of time.
at this point.
Yes.
Exactly. And a smaller percentage coming from the enterprise business. And this was how it was. But now comes 5G. Now suddenly that story changes. We've seen, with me also talking directly with a lot of TSPs or direct network vendors, there's a lot of emphasis on enterprise case studies, which was never been the case in the past, right? So, is it right to say, A, from a revenue standpoint, obviously, this tilt will tilt towards enterprise? And if so, because right now, since you are an industry association, there were a lot of consumer-driven business orientation. How do you see this shape up the industry? What is your view on this?
We must understand what is the difference between 4G and 5G. 5G is a new technology, and it is not an upgradation of only 4G. Right? Now, what happens in 5G, which is of consequence, is that it aggregates, I come to the same word, machines and human beings. It permits human beings to talk to machines and vice versa, which has never happened earlier. So this opens up a huge amount of vistas of what 5G can do. Okay. Now, coming back to your question, one of your questions of basically revenues coming from consumer business, yet it has been like that.
Yes.
Because machines never spoke to human beings. It was only human beings to human beings, whether over data or over voice switched, whichever way, right? Now comes this new thing, sensors.
Because IoT takes prominence suddenly.
Not only IoT
or IoE, Internet of everything.
Everything, yeah. That suddenly comes into being. And what does it bring in its wake? It brings in better efficiency in the manufacturing space, in the production space. Efficiencies become better, but along with efficiencies, it brings up newer demands on telecom networks.
Right.
Because unless the sensors are connected, unless the human beings are there in the factory premises or shop floor, if they are connected to the network, automated, then what is the advantage of technology if it is not there?
Right.
Wi-Fi was always there.
Right.
So Wi-Fi was connecting only sensors to sensors.
Exactly.
But it was not human being. Now here you have human being also getting connected. Right. So, and when you go beyond into 6G, this will further enhance. Right. So that is an area which has emerged. Now, why is it that people are looking at enterprise business more than they're looking at consumer business, and which is being proven also in the last 2 years? Use case is enterprise.
Right.
Use case is enterprise, and that too, enterprise which is coming up as Industry 4.0.
Right.
Not the older enterprises. Older enterprises don't have the wherewithal of using 5G. So they're not there. Right? So that is why everybody is now focusing on enterprise. Because there will be thousands and thousands of connections which will be required in a shop floor. How will you handle that unless you have 5G? So you can't do that with 4G. If it could have been done with 4G, it would have been done earlier. If today we are sitting here, there's a factory next door. My requirement of communication is like 4G, which I just explained. That factory requires 5G connection. What do I do? Do I lay a separate network for them? I should not. I should be able to hive off something from my own network without downgrading my network and give them a better experience as per their SLS. So that is what has come with 5G. That is called slicing.
Right.
Now that factory owner says, I don't want to send my data outside my factory premises. Don't send. You have edge data storage devices. Put it within your premise. So send only what you want to send outside. Right? So those sort of things have now opened up with 5G. It was never there earlier.
So a very interesting question that I was thinking when he was speaking. Tell me something. Somebody said there's nothing like that. Telecom is it's all tech, like you rightly said, right? But here's the interesting question that I have for you. At the end of it's all business, right, sir? Right? Therefore, profit organization. When there's a template on which you perform. So far, you work to cater to a B2C set of customers. And you've cracked the code, you've done that. There is supply chain, operations, marketing, sales, and you don't know that. Now suddenly, this is a completely new beast, the enterprise sector, which traditionally actually has not been served so much by the telcos rather than by other ICT folks, right? And without naming anyone, how do you see this space emerge? And again, as a industry association, how do you see your role actually changing how telcos also are viewed in this entire scheme of things?
See, we come back to the same thing of providing networks. Now, I will take you aside for a few seconds.
Yeah, please.
Now, tell me, over the internet, there are YouTube series in which you can learn surgery and you can learn how to become a doctor. Does it mean that you can actually do it? You can't. So there's a clamor in the telecom industry also. There are people who are saying that we will set up our own networks. Now, if a industry is manufacturing vanaspati ghee or automobiles, their primary job is to do that. A hospital job is to look after patients, not to set up telecom networks. Let people do what they're best at doing. And you aggregate it, use their services. So if you are wanting to use telecom networks, more specifically 5G, to integrate your sensors, to have control systems responding to the sensors, then let the telecom people lay down that. So that is how the telecom will enter.
Let's do its job.
Why it is possible in India and may not be possible in some countries. India is, unlike India, where there are many countries which are sparsely populated, where the distance between one population center and another population center at times are 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers. There you require private networks. Because if you have a campus which is removed from a population center where telecom networks exist, then you don't expect the telecom networks to start rolling out and giving telecom everywhere when there is no human being. So they require a private network which is captive to that premise. In India, tell me any such place where it
The time when you used to hear private LT, but
is finished.
it never took off.
So that is why I'm saying that business interests some time back started saying we'll set our own network.
Right.
Government also started saying we will give them spectrum at a this thing. But then we said, why do you want it? You tell the telco that this is my requirement.
Right.
Telco will provide. If the telco can't provide, then something wrong with that telco.
Right.
5G permits you to do that. It permits you to give a slice with different parameters, adhering to SLAs which the client wants, and charging you the same what they charge for their general subscriber. So if they can do it, let them do what they're best at doing.
Right. So I'll not take your interest to something that you touched upon earlier. I just want to touch upon this piece of OTT, like you said, because again, I'll echo what you just said in the beginning, that is it a level playing field? Because, for instance, we see messaging, right? And for instance, we would hardly use a SMS these days until unless it's a, verification code or so on and so forth. Most of us communicate through, say, a WhatsApp or a Telegraph and so on and so forth. Just one example, and there could be several examples like that. What is your role here to make sure that the interests of your stakeholders are best? I know it's a very broad area, sir, but
you're making me walk on eggshells. Okay, but I'll answer you honestly. There are two things I have to look at.
Sure.
One is the interest of the country,
Right.
and second is the interest of my members.
Right.
Let me talk about the interest of the country first.
Sure.
Now, all these people you named, I didn't name anybody. Okay, so all these people who are using services, who are providing services akin to SMS services,
Right.
are not regulated. They follow no security guidelines. There is no regulation for them. There is no policy directive for them. There is no lawful interception for them. Okay. So they do what they feel like doing, and that is why what happens what is happening now is most of your pesky things which come are not coming on SMS. They have shifted to these platforms. You can see it for yourself.
The volume has grown there.
Volume, why has it shifted? Because SMS was also providing almost free. Second, coming to the interest of my telcos. All this traffic which has migrated to these platforms because of the restrictions the government has placed on
Right.
is a drain on our revenues.
Right.
So we are losing out in that man.
Right.
So again, you have the same service, same route. If you are not going to place restrictions on them, and we want you to place restrictions in the interest of the country, then remove the restrictions from us also. That will also go bust up. That is what we are trying to sensitize the government on.
Okay. Like I said, yeah, I mean, I have many follow-up questions, but I'll confine myself to this. And moving on, I mean, my penultimate question would be, India, I mean, very popularly has a very high spectrum licensing, as we all are aware. I mean, you are the experts, sir. What I've read is what I'm just quoting. And I've been given to believe that takes a toll, because we have highest spectrum licensing, and our, I mean, the entire tariff, the revenue model is one of the most, I mean, it's the cheapest globally. How do you, and then you have very few players existing. Is one of the reasons, this being one of the reasons for that? How do you manage this? Because with every auction that we see, I don't know when the 6G auction is going to happen, but I'm assuming whenever that happens, sky is the limit as far as pricing goes. But when it comes to the revenue realization, we are probably one of the cheapest mobile tariffs in the world globally. How do you manage this? How do you take it out?
Right, that we are the cheapest as far as tariffs are concerned. Efficiencies, we are one of the best, and yet we are taxed almost 32%. Whatever revenues we earn going to taxes, which is the highest in the world.
Right.
Yet we are managing. So we are working on wafer thin margin, and we are also working at looking at the pot of gold which is lying at the end of the rainbow. We continue to work in that manner. We are at no point of time saying that we are in distress. We are not in distress, but we are not making the profits the way we should.
Right.
Counterparts.
Right.
Now, this is a long story as to why that spectrum was auctioned. You are aware of it.
Right.
Won't go into
Yes.
But in addition to the auction of the spectrum, we are also paying license fee, which is a revenue share of the
Right.
gross revenue that we earn. So isn't it a double whammy? For the same stuff, we are first buying it in auction.
Right.
And then you say that if you use what you have bought, we are also going to charge you profit share.
Right.
But this was okay till the time it was sub judice still last year. But that ruling has come now. Now it should be legal.
Right.
Coming to the next part of this answer, telecom was seen as a golden goose. Okay, and the primary reason was that you can only earn from telecom in form of taxes, or in form of later selling of spectrum. There's no other way you can.
Exactly. Yeah.
So take whatever you want from them, and they're not like IT, where you require them to expand to offshores. Telecom are not going to expand the way IT has expanded.
Right.
So take whatever you can, and be content. If they're making noises, give them a little bit so that they remain afloat. Don't let them become very proud. That was the model which was being followed. We kept shouting horse, but we also kept doing our business. Now with 5G coming, then we have to look at it in two aspects. One is without LTGs, and second is with them. So I'll look at it with.
Please. Yeah.
Government has to realize that they should not miss the woods for the trees.
No.
We have in our conversation spoken about how telecom has become a foundational.
Right.
Without telecom, the economy.
Absolutely.
So what forms the economy? All other industries. It's not telecom.
Well, all of them are connected. Everything is.
But they're all riding on telecom.
Right.
Now, if the government does not have a robust foundation of telecom, how are these industries going to benefit from 5G? If the foundation itself is weak, and which, if we don't have the resources to build the foundation, we will build a,
Right.
but we will tend to build a,
Right.
try our best to build a good foundation, but how is it possible?
Right. Right.
And then if the time limit, if we have limited resources, we will go into sectors where we can get some money. Social sectors will get it.
Right.
To avoid that, the government should see that by giving a foundation, which is omnipresent across the country, they will gain 100 times more revenue from the industries who are growing on telecom. You remove telecom substrate, they are not going to produce as much revenue.
Right.
So
The entire digitalization is happening on your chassis.
if they realize that, then they should reduce the burden at least on the networks. On the services, okay, we can understand you will take money. But why on the networks? There are many countries who are not charging any spectrum, who are not charging any taxes for network proliferation.
Right.
We are not saying you go to that far extent, but go somewhere.
Right.
Don't use an old algorithm when you had to find out the cost of spectrum as the only source of income. Now you factor in the other sources, and then you say that this is your concern. Then we will roll out faster. We will be able to look at longer gestation period. Now we've rolled out 5G, but there is no use case. We are not getting any return on it.
Right. Right.
And the period of holding obviously will be limited. So those are the things which are emerging. Now, last point which I said I'll come to. On top of all this, we have to carry LTG.
LTGs.
And they don't contribute anything. People tell us, why don't you sit with that? That's what we're asking the government. Make them sit with us and talk to us. If they're getting something for free, why will they sit with us? I mean, it'd be madness on their part. The government sits there, I want to pay you. So unless the government recognizes that fact, we are not going to...
So it's, to a certain extent, it becomes government's onus to make sure both the parties talk.
We are not saying that you lay down a limit.
Right.
We're not saying that.
Right.
Only limit you should lay down is that our startups, our MSMEs should not be bought. They should not have to pay to the telcos.
Right.
So we are saying that 7%, 10% of the traffic, total traffic that we carry, if you're contributing 7%, up to 7%, we'll not take money from. But if you're contributing 60%, 70%, you bond it.
Yes, yes. Got it.
It ain't the answer. Like,
Got it.
that is not demand.
Right. Right. So, riveting conversation. My last question, again, as I'm not as initiated, knowledgeable as you, but if I memory serves me correct, 2G was launched, back in 1995, and then it took about 13, 14 years for 3G to get launched, and then came 4G, and then 5G was launched back in 2022. First and foremost, for someone who is non-technical, right? What makes it change from 4G to 5G to 2G to 3G? That's one. We saw that it took a long time for, say, 3G to get launched, almost 13, 14 years. Would it mean 6G is going to get launched in the next 10 years, 5 years? That's one part of the question. The other, given that 5G has been sold with the promise of ultra low latency, right, and very, very solid network stability, what is expected of 6G and what is the future of telecom? That's my concluding question, sir.
See, technology has a cycle.
Right.
It has to flow out of labs, out of research labs.
Right.
It has to go into testing modules and then into production.
Right.
And then into field trial, and then it gets implemented. Right? So that cycle can be shortened only to an extent, but not too much.
Sure.
If you compress it too much, you're not bringing out what you want. So keeping that in mind, the cycle can get stretched if the public demand is not there. Because, like I told you right in the beginning, that it's a commercial van. So if there is no demand that is visualized, then why are we going to get into production?
Right.
Delay.
Right. Right.
Having said that, it takes time to absorb technology.
Right. Right. So,
When we went from 1G to 2G and 2G to 3G, there's something new happened.
right.
1G it was circuit switched. Right? 2G, you are aware, Then came 3G. What is new that came into 3G is smartphone.
Right.
So you got internet in your.
Yes. Yeah.
It took time for people to absorb that and use cases to develop. Right. Same thing happened in 3G. The speech became
Right. Right.
capacity became better.
Right.
And then by the time we got used to it, came 4G.
Right.
So if you see, you may call it a coincidence, but I say it's a trend. All the odd Gs transit from 1G to 3G to 4G and 4G.
5G. Yeah.
So all the odd Gs testing phases when new technology has been just introduced.
Okay.
And people get used to that. The people who roll out also get used to it. People who make applications also get used to it. The consumer also gets used to it. By the time they get used to it, the next G comes in with better flavor. And that is where they exploit it. So that's why 3G did not live too long. 4G came. And the maximum exploitation took place in 4G.
Absolutely.
You look at 1G, nothing much happened.
But going by this, then you expect 6G to be the
Because see, what is happening today, and this I see world over, whenever I travel, people are thinking of applications wearing the hat of a 4G. They have rolled out 5G, but their thinking apparatus is still 4G.
right.
So what they are seeing is rolling out as use cases could have been done with 4G.
Right. Right.
So why have we invested so much money in 5G? The reason is that they are looking at consumer business. 4G was all consumer business. So all application that they're looking at is B2C.
Right. Right.
Nobody is looking at, now they have started, when we are at the middle of the 5G cycle, they start thinking of enterprise. Most spoke about enterprise 5 years back.
Right.
They started talking about enterprise.
True.
By the time they start learning about enterprise would have also scaled a path. Telecom would have started rolling out 6G. So that is where the exploitation.
Right.
So this is a cycle which will keep following. As far as when 6G will come, I would say that the rollout cycle will be minimum 10 years.
Right.
And therefore, I don't visualize commercial launch of 6G before 2030.
Okay.
So I don't think it will happen before that. There will be small instances where people will demonstrate
Right. Right.
speech.
Like POC is being done.
That has already started,
Right. Right.
but that is not rollout of technology.
Right.
The way we see rollout of technology, we are still in the phase of rollout of 5G. We are not yet rolled out.
Fully. Right. Right.
So once the 5G cloud develops across the country, that is the time we will actually start experiencing 5G. Today, what we are experiencing is hopping from 5G to 4G.
Right. Right.
So that is where there is a lot of distress.
Right.
That will vanish when the entire cloud is 5G.
Right. Right.
As a consumer, I don't have to bother about shifting from 4G to 5G.
Perfect. Sir, thank you so much. Like I said, I can continue, but there has to be a conclusion to this. Absolute honor to host you, learned a lot, and hope I continue learning from you, speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I learned how to ask questions.
Honor, sir. Thank you. Thank you.